let's talk about the safe space that is supposed to be therapy, particularly, specifically, counseling therapy. Now, we've all heard that in a therapy session, it's supposed to be a safe place, that you can be vulnerable, that you can share your feelings, express your thoughts, and open up. But that isn't completely true. For instance, there is law that if you express harm to others or yourself, then the therapist is forced by law to get outside agencies involved, which could get you committed and evaluated. But also, therapy is only as safe as you feel it is. Now, as a counselor in training, I can say that I don't go into a session and make assumptions or judgments or anything like that. But that isn't entirely true of everyone. We are human. We may have subconscious judgments. We may have our ideas about an individual. There will be times when a therapist really just doesn't like a client. I personally have not had clients yet, so I'm not speaking from experience. But I am reiterating what other therapists have said on social media and stuff like that. We are human. We have subconscious thoughts. We have conscious thoughts. We have judgments. It is what it is. But besides all that, as the client, as the individual receiving counseling, receiving therapy, the idea of a safe space is different for everybody. For instance, some people may not mind being interrupted in order to redirect or refocus the session or whatever. I, on the other hand, and my son, for that matter, find being interrupted extremely triggering. For me, it comes from trauma, and it sends me into, if that interruption is, if I perceive it negatively, it can lead me to shut down. And that shutdown can go one of two ways. Either it can go into rumination, where I just dwell on the idea that I was just interrupted and all the possibilities, all the scenarios and intentions and everything else. Or it can lead me to meltdown, cause me to become overly emotional, go nonverbal, stim more vigorously, more frequently, be somewhat non-responsive. So the idea of therapy, of counseling as a safe space, is very dependent on the person receiving the counseling. It's all about what they find triggering, what they find negatively impactful, and what has the potential to cause them to either shut down or lash out. In all honesty, there really is no such thing as a safe space, because, like I said, everyone has their own thoughts, everyone has their own feelings, their own ideas, their own presumptions, their own judgments. Sometimes people act on those, sometimes they don't. Sometimes those thoughts, feelings, judgments, presumptions cause microaggressions. Sometimes they don't. You know, it's all on the person receiving counseling, receiving therapy, on whether or not it's a safe space for them. And that's mostly true. Now, the therapist, the counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever you want to call them, does play a part in it. They do have a role. They do have their share in the responsibility. But most of it is up to the client, patient, whichever model you prefer. I prefer the medical model when it comes to labeling. I don't like the idea of client, because the term client makes me feel it makes it feel like it's a transaction, very transactional, where I'm only in it for the money, where when I look at you, I only see dollar signs. I prefer the term patient because we're all healers and we're all patients. If you're a parent and your child has a boo-boo and you kiss it, make it feel better, you put a Band-Aid on it and some ointment or whatever, you're a healer. If you're hurt and you need help, you're the patient. So I look at it more as patient rather than client. And so in that way, it's very individualistic, just like whether or not a session is a safe space for a client. It's up to the individual on whether or not they consider it a safe space. The therapist can tell them until they're blue in the face that this is a safe space. Feel free to open up. Feel free to be vulnerable. You don't have to worry about judgment here. But when it comes to past trauma and experiences, life experiences that have proved, that have shown you that that isn't really true anywhere, it's hard to feel safe in a session. It's hard to feel unjudged. You break down crying, you experience emotions, you're going to feel judged, whether you are judged by the clinician or not. You share an intrusive thought that you're having. You're going to feel like you're being judged, whether that's true or not. That's just how our bodies work. That's how our minds work. We're conditioned to experience these feelings. And when it comes to conditioning, it's very difficult to move past and ignore.